Joy FM, good morning. It is 8:14 on this Friday, February 23rd. It's Daniel, Melody, and Gabe, and we're going live to Alexandria, Indiana. Bill and Gloria Gaither have been friends with the Graham family for so long. Bill, Gloria, you guys with us?
Yes,
we are.
here.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning. How's it going?
You know what? In North Carolina and Virginia and Tennessee and Carolina here, it's a good morning. How about Indiana?
Well,
It's a rainy morning here. We've got lots of rain, so that says spring can't be far away.
Now, Gloria, are you a coffee first thing in the morning kind of gal?
Oh, yes. First thing in the morning, somewhere
Amen.
mid-morning, afternoon, after supper. Yeah.
You fit right in around
Yes, yes.
here. Well,
okay, you want to know about me? I'm two cups in the morning, and that's just about it for the entire day. But I love those 2 cups in the morning.
Oh, man. Well, obviously, we are talking to you with, as I've been saying over and over again, with two strong emotions. There is an appropriate time to grieve the loss of a friend, the loss of someone who walked this earth with us. And we're not going to have that relationship on this earth anymore. But at the same time, as believers, we have the hope of heaven, which is just amazing. And so there is this joy with Dr. Graham's homegoing. And so we wanted to catch up with you guys and find out, just get your reflections on the news.
You know, the other part of the joy is that he is relieved from the suffering because the last few years have been extremely tough on him and probably his family too, because of his lack of hearing and and just the loss of a lot of the functions of the human body that we just take for granted when we're younger.
You know, there was a headline that I don't know if it was yesterday or night before last, but I caught it on the news from Daryl Graham, his brother's son, and the headline said, "I won't be grieving for my uncle." And of course, I caught that because I thought, okay, somebody has found some quote somewhere that was disparaging or something, and they've sniffed out. But not the case. When I opened the story, in spite of that headline, it just said my uncle has been the same on stage and off stage. He is a wonderful, consistent, humble, sweet, and pure man, he said. And he has been suffering for these last few couple of years. And he said, "This I will not grieve because he's got his wish. He's with his love of his life and with the Lord of his heart. And this is not a time to grieve but celebrate." And I thought, okay, that pretty much sums it up. I think the family in general and everybody knows him, that he was straight ahead.
Yep.
He is what he is. He was honest. He was straightforward. He was humble, and that's him. I mean, my mother used to say he was all wool and a yard wide, meaning didn't matter which direction you came at him, you got the same guy. And that's what integrity means, to be integrated, like every single piece of you is saying the same thing. And I think that would be Billy Graham to a T.
Wow. You guys not only worked with him through the years, but in probably the most recent of years, going back several years, did a series of videos, both at the Cove in Asheville, North Carolina, but also one I was a part of down at the library, the Billy Graham Library in Charlotte. And so the Gaither Music Organization and the Graham Evangelistic Association, to me, you guys just work together so very well. Do you have some memories, either from those most recent tapings or even going back to the Crusades?
You know, the first time that we met him, honey, correct me if this is not right, but I think was in the 70s at the Toronto Crusade. Would that be the?
I think so. Yeah.
And and we met him on the platform in a stadium where there were 70,000 other people watching on. But when he came up on the platform, Cliff had done some singing with the crowd. And then he sang with the choir, had the choir to sing, about a 5,000 voice choir. sang "Because He Lives, I Can Face Tomorrow," and he said, I want to say this correctly, and Gloria, stop me if not true, but he said, now that is Dr. Graham's favorite song, or maybe he said one of his favorite songs. At least we're singing it at his funeral next Friday, Because He Lives.
Wow.
And he, Gloria, do you remember he came over and knelt down in front of us, because he was, what is he, 6'5", 6'6", knelt down in front of us and said, he's right, I love that song. And, that's the first time we met him. Then after that, when we started doing the videos, we were up at the house on top of the mountain, which is a great old log cabin. And it's so homey. It feels like a farmhouse. And one of the last pictures, we were there doing interviews with him and Ruth, and they were just a sweet couple. But one of the memories I have one of the last times we were there with both of them, they were both sitting out front in lawn chairs, and we took a picture. And Gloria said, "You need to get a picture of that, because that's going to be a memory forever."
Mm-hmm. He was on that porch. They had wheeled him out in his wheelchair, so he could be out there in the porch as we were leaving, and he had his dog with him. And he was framed in that small. It was a small porch on the side of their house, not their big side that where it overlooks the mountain.
Yeah.
And he was telling us goodbye and made that effort to come out there himself to tell us goodbye from the porch.
Wow.
And I did. I said, you better memorize this.
Yes.
Man, that's really special.
A mental snapshot.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
As we have been talking and reflecting upon the life of Billy Graham, you cannot help. And I paid particular attention not just to Christian media, but to the secular, the news organizations, all the coverage of him. You cannot talk about Billy Graham without talking about Jesus, without talking about the gospel, and it's not just in a passing mention. You have to go deep into the centrality of what this faith is about. And we've just been making comment after comment. Look at the testimony, but look at the number of people who may make decisions for Christ even through the passing of America's pastor.
Yeah, it's really he did not soft pedal the gospel. The one gospel that he preached is that Jesus died for you. Jesus loves you, and you need to get right with him. He wants you to come. Yeah. And of course, Just As I Am has become the national anthem for the Graham organization. But that song so reflects how Billy preached too. That God knows you already. He knows where you are. He knows your flaws. He died for you. Come home. And he said that all over the world, and was interpreted in every language on the planet, I think. But that message, he never veered from that. And any coverage of him is it says that over and over. So yeah, you can't find a quote from Billy Graham that isn't focused on that somehow.
Yeah.
The other thing is, and Gloria knows this, I love history and I love biographies, and I love to read what people say about character. David Brooks has a new book out called The Road to Character. And slice it any way you want to slice it, but when you think about character in the last century, I mean, this man and this woman just has to be at the top of the list. Now, the beautiful thing about it, he was so humble, and every time somebody would try to give him an A+ in the character side, he'd say, "Wait a second." He said, I fall short in so many areas, and that's part of the beautiful part of his character. He said, I could have been a better dad. Well, I mean, join the club. We all could have been a better dad, and we all could have raised our kids better, and all of that. But character is what you do when nobody is looking.
Yeah.
Right.
and the people who finally make the book in character, when you talk about top character, are not flawless people, but they are people whose compass was so on center that no matter what happened, they were not going to veer from that, from their true compass, from that back to the inner integrity that Gloria was talking about. And I think that's what everybody's trying to say. I had lunch yesterday with a person that was trying to say, boy, he was a perfect person. It's really interesting, everybody trying to describe it. Now, what they mean by that, there were no scandals or anything on the front page of the paper. And that part, I mean, we're extremely grateful and thankful for, especially in this day and time where on social media you can just about say anything you want to say about anybody. But I don't think Billy Graham would carry that flag about himself.
Right.
That was a perfect person. It's only I've often told the people who sing with us who get a little proud about what they have done. I mean, we've lived, we've been married for 55 years, and I thank God for that. But I don't want to hold that as a club over people maybe who wasn't as fortunate as I, simply because marriage takes two people to make that work. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And so his humility in what a lot of people looked at as a flawless life, his humility and his integrity would say, no, not so fast, not so fast. Well, that's part of his character, and that's part of the reason we all knew him and we all loved him.
In one of his last interviews that was covered this week, he said they said something like that to him, and he said no. He said, there are things I would have done differently, and they said, well, what could that possibly be? And he said, I would have taken fewer speaking engagements. I would have traveled less.
Right.
I would have prayed more. I would have been still longer. He had listed all these things that he would have done. But his integrity, I think Bill is right, is that is the thing that has come through. It's come through not only for the public, and I think this is the proof of the pudding, it has come through with his family. I interviewed Ned, who probably is the least interviewed because he's lived in Seattle after an accident he had, I think mountain climbing. But he is the one that we know the least, but he is the one that really fulfilled Ruth's desire that one of her children would go to China, where she grew up.
Oh, yeah.
As a child of a missionary.
Yeah.
And it was Ned and Tina that actually started the East Gates ministry. And they are the ones that, because their mission was far away and they ran it from Seattle,
right,
were able to drop everything and come and take care of Ruth when she fell and broke her hip and had some life-threatening health issues. And what a dear couple those two are. And, at the end of the game, if your kids all say, okay, this is the real deal, we're going to serve God. To me, anything you say in public is supported by that.
No doubt. Someone said the other day that, it's the gospel that he preached that he knew he needed for himself every day. And that's the humility I think you're talking about there, too.
Yes, it's one thing, back to that phrase, it's the gospel that he preached. And that's important. The words that come out of our mouths are extremely important. But I think the thing that made him so extremely effective is the gospel that he preached was also the gospel that he lived with the little insignificant stagehand behind a crusade stage. That was making the technical, mechanical things happen. The way he treated them, the way he reacted to them, the kindness he showed to them, to the people. He would show as much kindness to them as he would the celebrities in any city. When he came to a city, obviously the mayor was there, the governor was there, and everybody, and everybody'd say, you got to make room for all of those places. people. Yeah, that's true. But at the same time, he was so sensitive to and they say that even in Asheville, that if you look up, sometimes he'd be over in a corner in a restaurant with a couple of his friends eating, and step out in a little church, and just wanted to worship that morning. So it's one thing to preach the gospel, but it's another because there's a lot of people who are very articulate. I can remember when I was a kid, we used to have an evangelist who would come to town, and he was fantastic, but he was terrible with people. And the pastor would say, if we can just put him in a hotel about 20 miles away from the church and just let him come in and do his thing and then put him back in a hotel, we're going to be fine, because he was a loner. And there wasn't anything inconsistent in his life. It's just that he wasn't good around folks. Mm-hmm. I don't think anybody can say that about Billy, because he really loved people.
Yes.
Yeah, and he loved people across the board. I mean, a lot has been made about him being friends of presidents, which is not minor, because he was objective. I remember after 9/11, and he came to the National Church and walked up on that platform. It was like the whole country sighed a sigh of relief. It's like, okay, there is a man of God, and he still believes that God is on his throne. Yeah. We can believe that too. I mean, there was just something about his presence. So he was a statesman, a huge statesman of the world. Mm-hmm. But he was also, a regular guy up there on that mountain with, his dogs and his kids and, whatever. And it's I think of Kipling's poem, if you can meet with statesmen and you can meet with common people, and they're all the same to you. Mm. To me, that is the essence of a really great person.
Well, and I think, to me, if you remember after 9/11, boy, this country was in depression. A mental depression. And when he walked up in that National Cathedral, there was a Jewish rabbi that spoke, and I think probably even a Muslim cleric, and a Catholic priest. But when he walked up there, it was like it's what we call presence. There was such a presence about it. He says, "I am old now, but God is still God, and He's on the throne." And it seemed like the whole country had a sigh of relief to say. And his voice was not at the level that it used to be, but his spiritual presence was so powerful, visually and through his voice. And I'm not sure there will ever be another person to do that exactly. Now, God will raise up somebody else who will give us another presence, But I'm not sure there's, right now I don't see somebody who can give you that kind of
a gentleman that we all know, Wayne Dooley, who works in the technical aspect behind the scenes at some Gaither events, also worked with Franklin Graham, and at one of the last events where Dr. Graham was there, Wayne, again, as a backstage technical guy, he said, I was asked to push the wheelchair of Dr. Graham, and what an honor, but also remarked at how kind and interested Dr. Graham was in Wayne. He said, here, I feel like I'm a nobody, and he's spending time talking with me, and I know you guys know Wayne, and what a sweetheart. But I tell you, that's a great note to end on here as we're having this discussion with Bill and Gloria Gaither, because that's the life, that humility of Dr. Graham, but the message that he never compromised on. I guess one final thing I will say is we do have, and I hope this is not an insensitive question, but Bill, as a programming mind that you have of piecing together different singers and different a song for the moment, can you imagine in heaven what kind of and again, this word may be insensitive, what kind of a quote-unquote program may be happening between Cliff Barrows, Bev Shea, Dr. Graham, and countless others who have served in ministry and, of course, for all time that are there in heaven right now?
Well, it's interesting that we sang also at Cliff Barrows' funeral, and they used the hymn "To God Be the Glory," and I think they're going to sing that hymn. That's a Fanny Crosby lyric. And I think Bev would feel the same way. I think they lived that out. To God be the glory. Great things He has done, and just to be part, for them to be part of that, I would think. There have been a lot of cartoons in the last few days. One of the cartoons was Billy was walking through heaven, and St. Peter said, "There are millions of people here who'd like to thank you." Now that's good, and we'll smile at that. I'm sure that's true.
Sure.
But I think the first thing he would say, and Bev would say, and Cliff would say, and they would join hands, and then Billy could finally sing. He couldn't sing down here, but I think he would sing, "To God be the glory."
Amen.
Great things He has done.
Oh, that's good. Bill and Gloria Gaither, thank you guys for waking up early with us this morning here on Joy FM. It's been a treasure to get to talk with you.
Thank you.
Blessings.